Welcome to the Bradenton area, on the Gulf Coast of Florida, where the easy pace of island life comes naturally in this coastal playground with endless white sand beaches, stunning natural preserves to explore, relaxing vibes all around, and it's a seafood lover's paradise. Plan to stay a while to explore vibrant downtown Bradenton with top-rated attractions like the Bishop Museum of Science and Nature, and discover this friendly community set along the Bradenton Riverwalk, where you'll find lots of surprises around every corner. Come lose yourself in the sun-drenched Gulf Coast and change your reality here in the Bradenton area. Discover Florida's West Coast in Bradenton, Anna Maria Island, and Longboat Key. Learn more at BradentonGulfIslands.com.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending upon where you are, in which time zone you are. Welcome to the Global Conference on Services and Retail Management. My name is Dr. Cihan Çobanoglu. I am proudly serving as the co-chair of GLOSERV. I am also McKibben and Dart Chair Professor in the MoMA College of Business at the University of South Florida. Today is the fourth and the last day of GLOSERV. We had amazing keynote sessions, panels, invited speakers, and we are going to finish GLOSERV on a high note. We have an amazing speaker today that's going to deliver our closing keynote speech. So I would like to invite Mr. Russ Klein to the stage. Russ, welcome.
Thank you, Cihan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Russ. Russ Klein is the Chief Executive Officer of American Marketing Association. He is going to deliver a presentation entitled Services and Retail Experience Design in a Post-COVID World. Russ Klein has quarterbacked teams for many of the world's foremost brand names, holding top marketing and advertising posts at Dr. Pepper 7-Up companies, Gatorade, 7-Eleven Corporation, Arby's Restaurant Group, and Burger King, where he was the president. He has held leadership positions with Leo Burnett and FCNB advertising agencies. Russ is a partner with Popsicles LLC, listed as #2 on Inc. 5,000 fastest growing companies in America. Russ also serves as a senior advisor to Goldman Sachs for strategic acquisitions. As the CEO for American Marketing Association and torchbearer for the discipline, Russ is charged with an epic transformation of the AMA. Klein recently announced a bold restructuring initiative, reconstituting the American Marketing Association as a technology company that provides professional development solutions, credentials of value, esteemed peer-reviewed thought leadership, personal growth, advancement, and fellowship in the field of marketing. Today, Russ is here to provoke you to think differently about brand building. Recently, the father of modern marketing, Phil Kotler, shared that Russ Klein is my mentor on experience design. Russ, the floor is yours.
Jihan, thank you so much for the kind introduction and the kind words. And welcome to all of you from around the world. I just want to remind you all that you can participate in this presentation in a unique way today on your smartphone. If you haven't already from previous instructions, you can go to soundoff.ama.org, or you can scan the QR code that was provided. Simply enter your name, join the session. You'll see a play button. You can click on it and ensure that your phone is in landscape mode, and that will be your control panel to provide feedback throughout the presentation. I encourage you to please provide feedback, not just when I ask for it, when I do some polling questions, but during the presentation. If something makes you laugh or something that you want to reaffirm, please feel free to go forward and give us your feedback on your control panel. Don't be shy. So welcome to the future of brand building. And when Phil Kotler and I originally met, we were at a conference on value creation, where there are many presentations from thought leaders. And my particular assertion is after a career really defined by a lot of advertising achievements and storytelling, if you will, I've evolved my thinking and that I believe experience design is the future to brand building. And it really creates a future now, I think, that will be a new societal imperative in the 21st century for marketers. And that's a world in which everything is bought and nothing is sold. Think about that. A world in which everything is bought and nothing is sold. Now, this is not a world without marketing. This is a world marketing differently. And hopefully this presentation will begin your journey on thinking differently about brand building in the future and a society in which everything is bought and nothing is sold. So let's start here to get a little experience with your sound off feedback tool. I'm going to play this video, so just sit back and take it in. You may have seen it before in the Super Bowl or other places, and then I'm going to come back out and ask you a few questions about it.
Is this the best a man can get? Instead of excuses, we need to make change. Men need to hold other men accountable. That's not how we treat each other, okay? Because the action we take today will be seen by the men of tomorrow.
So I have shown this commercial around the world, several continents, many countries, many cities in the United States and North America. And I'd like you to now give me your response to having seen this commercial with three different possibilities. Number one would be the message is right, but Gillette has no moral authority to take this stand. Number 2, the message doesn't resonate with me. And number 3, it's the right message at the right time. So good for Gillette. So now let's go back to number 1, and through your applause button, let me know if you agree that the message is right, but Gillette has no moral authority to take this stand. Let's hear from you. Okay. Number 2, the message doesn't resonate with me. Let's hear from you. All right. And then number 3, it's the right message at the right time. Good for Gillette. Okay. So it looks like there was some favor to number 3. We'll come back to this at the end of the presentation with some additional discussion. So let's talk about the main body here of the presentation, which is all about experience design. And starting with why now? Why is experience design now an imperative? Well, those of you who are familiar with its function may think that and remember that experience was once viewed as a middle or lower funnel skill set and function. You also can say that we've seen the world compress the time between sensing a need and a brand experience thanks to our mobile phone, which is essentially both a medium and a distribution channel. And of course, the Amazon world of instant gratification, we see a real compression between sensing that need and actually experiencing the brand. Number 3, experience design is now used at the most elementary stages of a business model and business plan. That's why now, because it's really applied at the outset of a business model, hiring practices, all the upstream functions that once were thought to be sort of back of the house or administrative or internal functions actually can benefit from great experience design. And that's why my historical view around what constituted a brand in an oversimplified way was that a brand equaled the promise plus the experience. And I think some might say marketing got its name, in some corners a bad name, by doing a lot of promise making, but not a lot of promise keeping by the experience that people ultimately had with a product or service. And the new world for experience design and brand building is that a brand equals experience to the power of story. And I'm going to explain some reasons for that. But what this really means and why it's expressed in an algebraic formula is because you can build a brand with experience alone, even if story is 0. On the other hand, if experience is 0, or if you want to use the integer 1 and say it's less than 1, no matter what your story is, your brand is going to be diminished by a failing experience or the absence of an experience that is positive. So that is really the mathematical formula for brand building in the 21st century. And as a result, I really try to be as jarring and as forthright as I can by saying too many marketers are addicted to storytelling. Again, I'm not against storytelling. I think storytelling is an important part of a brand and an important dimension of a brand. But it's really about who's doing the storytelling and what motivates that storytelling that I would like you to think differently about. So you can't help but go back to the foundation of marketing with the 4 Ps, which have been a very durable construct for us as marketers to use over the years. There have been many attempts to extend them to the 7 Ps and other permutations. And it's with humility that I talk about reframing the 4 Ps because they have been a stalwart framework for marketers for decades. But there is a post-digitization era that they now operate in. And I think that gives us some license to think differently about what has now occurred that may cause us to think differently about those 4 Ps. First off, there is a new standard for convenience and customer expectations across categories. Why? The Amazon effect. It used to be that you would look at within a category for satisfaction and NPS. Now, Amazon has been such a compelling customer experience, it has caused consumers to expect the same level of friction-free experience, convenience across all categories. And they become a very discriminating, much higher standard for other brands, other products and services to meet. Number two, 1993, Steve Jobs' right-hand designer coined a term called user experience. And that began a period of intense focus on the user, usefulness and usability, as opposed to what we might have thought traditionally around customer centricity or consumer centricity. User, usefulness, and usability. And number three, there has been a shift from customer sentiment, most commonly thought of to be brand loyalty, to a two-way customer engagement and performance marketing. So two-way, because now we know that it's not just a brand talking at customers. They live in a world of social media and omni-channel world where feedback and storytelling is coming from all directions. Your customer, your competitors, your critics, and your employees, and so forth. So there really is this multi-direction customer engagement going on. And then, of course, technology has created the opportunity to measure impact and customer engagement in an area that we now call performance marketing. Number four, we, as I said earlier, can build a brand on experience design alone. And the best testament to that for me was back in the early days of seeing Starbucks show up on every corner. And as an advertising executive at the time, observing that they weren't doing any paid advertising. And for decades, they didn't do any paid advertising. They do a bit now. But throughout that introductory period of this brand explosion for Starbucks, they were all about the experience, the third place. And while there was some storytelling going on, who was doing it? It was their customer. And that's the kind of storytelling we should all want. So I want to start with the premise here, and I often consult firms where I step into their CEO's office and I want to remind them that nobody wants your product. And people are brushed back by that assertion. But the fact is that nobody wants your product. They want what? Solutions. If Henry Ford was focused on product improvement, he would have had faster horses. Instead, he was able to open up the aperture. When I speak to firms, I say, change your product managers' names to solution managers. Take your product R&D to solution R&D, and you will change the mindset of your organization when it comes to innovation. And what is at the root of product and solutions? Usefulness. This, to me, is a renaissance now, a time for usefulness, as I said, really focused on the user, usefulness, and usability. If we think about the hierarchy of solutions, functionality and dependability. Does it work, and does it work over and over again the way I expect it to? That constitutes usefulness. Now, as we move into the midsection of this hierarchy, though, there's a key area that many organizations, designers overlook, and this is the usability of a solution, a product, or a service. There are 5 key traits to usability. The first is accessibility. Can your customer, your addressable market, be your accessible market? And by that, it could mean wheelchair ramps in front of a retailer. It could mean a Braille keyboard for blind. It could mean closed captioning for hearing. It could mean access to the internet in rural areas. There is every dimension imaginable around accessibility. So make sure that when you define your addressable market, you turn that into your accessible market. Number 2, is it learnable? And number 3, is it easy to remember? This is relatively straightforward. Although we can also rely on the fact that our customers will almost always misuse the product or service that we design when they first experience it. And that's why number 4, error tolerance is so important. After they misuse it, can they get back on track to use it the way it was intended to be used? And we'll talk a little bit more about error tolerance here, but I can tell you that it is a common and universal axiom that customers will misuse your product or service at the very first attempt. And then the 5th, affirmational. Is it affirming to the customer that they, in fact, are using it correctly? Now, this could mean anything from a download, where I've often downloaded a file and I don't get the affirmation that the download has been successful. So what do? I keep downloading it, only later to find out in my download folder that I've downloaded the same file 7 times because I didn't get affirmation that I did it right. Affirmation is a critical aspect of product, service, and solution design. In fact, you can look even in the area of now disabled people, and we think about the accessibility of social media, which I think we all think, well, everybody can access social media, but you have a strong number of people who with disabilities say that they struggle with social media, web browsing, audio streaming, and video streaming. These are customers who are having access denied to these social platforms because of their utility, their ease of use, their usability. Let's take a look at the microwave. A journal, a mega science journal, recently stated that a science proves that microwaves suck at almost everything. Now, maybe that's true, but why do we use microwaves? We use microwaves to warm my food. But look at this control panel. What are all these buttons for on this control panel? For essentially one function that I want to perform. This is an example over now 50 years of a product that has not been able to evolve into essential functionality with its usable interface. So also another great example of this is looking at remote controls. This is the history of remote controls right up through today. Now, I can tell you that this is not an error-tolerant interface to watching a TV, video, listening to audio. I have waited, I'm not embarrassed to say any longer, a week for my son to visit me so he could help me get back out of a mode that I accidentally put myself into and couldn't get out of. Has anybody else had that experience out there? Please tell me I'm not alone. Honey, how can I get back in the picture? Okay, now we all know that shampoo doesn't need to generate bubbles or suds. It is there purely out of affirmation. I can tell that if this thing is bubbling up and it's got suds, it must be working, right? It's another example of affirmation of a given solution. And as the CEO of Sony once said, it's really not about what's possible. It's about what is relevant. It's about essential relevance. And nobody has done this better than Virgin America with the industry's fastest flight booking in less than 60 seconds. Virgin America focused really on 3 essential features: check-in, boarding pass, flight alerts. Now, could they have designed another 10 features? Did the developers have the capability of doing that? Of course they did. But what did they do? They went with what's relevant and essential on this experience, which is why it's the #1 app in its space on App Store and Google Play. So let's now move into, we're talking about experience design and we haven't really defined it. The first thing I'd like to say is my view of experience design is it is the combination of design thinking and decision science. Sort of design thinking, which is a high empathy, highly iterative, co-creative skill set, and decision science, which is all about why do people do what they do when they do it. And understanding both of those elements will put you in position to be a great experience designer. There are many features and facets of world-class experience design, but there is only one that when I leave the building and I say, if you do nothing else with experience design, be intentional. Not unlike advertising, you can say, well, we're not going to advertise anymore, but you're not going to stop the storytelling going on about your brand from your competitors, your critics, and so forth. So you want to have some ability to shape your own story. This is even more dramatic when it comes to experience design. Everyone is going to have an experience, whether you are intentional about it or not. Why leave it up to the gods in terms of what experience they have, and instead shape that experience with intentional experience design? Experience is worth talking about, which introduces us into the whole world of why participation or engagement is now a different means of brand building than it was in a pre-digital era. The term customer engagement is one that we all use every day in the world of marketing. And we all use it, I think, not necessarily agreeing that it means the exact same thing. Let me hear from your applause just how many of you use the term customer engagement or have it used around you. I'll give you a moment to just give me your applause on how common you hear this. Okay. So customer engagement, I call it a suitcase word because you carry it around. We all carry it around. We all invoke it, but we all don't define it to be the same thing. So what is it? I can see that there's a lot of you that now have heard and seen this term thrown around. Well, there is a scholarly definition for customer engagement that I like to default to, which is it is a direct transaction plus a direct participation. Now, these are words that I use. The author of Profitable Customer Engagement by V. Kumar really goes deep on this, and he uses different language, but it's essentially the same concept, which is customer engagement involves a direct transaction and direct participation. Direct transaction might be, did they buy something? Did they register in an email like you had hoped they would? And then there is direct participation. Did they like you, post something about you, share, feedback, user-generated content, follow, review, rate, recommend, or any other form of direct participation you can think of? It takes both of these elements to represent profitable customer engagement. If you have a direct transaction with no direct participation, you have a fleeting event, a one-time event. It could be revenue, it could be great, but it's a one-time event. If you have direct participation with no direct transaction, I call that gossip, because you've got nothing to show for the storytelling and the things that are going on around your brand. You must have both to constitute customer engagement, and you should have a means of measuring then these two components of customer engagement. In shorthand, I call this behavioral social currency. So you've now got some sense of what we're talking about here with experience design. We're going to go into some cases in a moment, but who created the first intentional experience? There are a lot of people out there that are candidates. For instance, it could be Starbucks, who I referred to earlier. Could be Disney, who spends $1 billion a year on intentional experience design. Could be Apple. And so I'd like the audience, using your applause button, to first tell me how many of you think Starbucks was the first intentional experience designer. Okay. How many of you think Disney was the first intentional experience designer? Okay. And how many of you think Apple was the first intentional experience designer? Okay. Pretty resounding preference for Apple. Okay. There we go. So none of these choices is a bad choice. They all are pioneers in experience design. But I like to say that marketers are late for everything. And in this case, we're 27,000 years too late, because you have to go back to prehistoric religion to find the first experience design, intentional experience design. Now, I'm not here to make any comments about pro or con religion or what type of religion. I'm asking you to think about religion from an academic perspective and how we can learn how they have been very intentional about the use of space, the use of negative space, the use of light, color, aroma, sound, music, the physical subordination of kneeling at a pew. Or if you go into a confessional, in the case of the Catholic Church, you're seated in a claustrophobic area and it's dark and you have a screen on the other side. There's light and forgiveness and absolution. Very intentional, right? And it has lasted for eons. Intentional experience design. So this is what I think introduces the difference between habit and ritual. Habit and ritual. What is the difference? Well, the difference is that a ritual has meaning. And generally habits, if there is meaning, it's very, very minuscule, sort of de minimis levels of meaning. But rituals, on the other hand, have a whole spectrum of meaning. Now, there are small R rituals. I know we all have them. You all have them. Those small R rituals are nimble, casual, personal. They do have some level of meaning. They are affirmations of normality. And I think small R rituals have suffered greatly during the COVID lockdown. This is why cabin fever is the level that it is for people to break out back into their normal activities, because so many of those things that they can do are affirmations of normality. It might be Sunday afternoon coffee. And when we talk about the kind of storytelling that's generated from small R ritual experiences, the storytelling tends to be personal, shorter, and more intrinsic. You know, you don't tend to wax on about your Sunday afternoon coffee months in advance of it or months after. You tend to basically have an isolated event. You might share it with somebody, but it's not a scaled up kind of storytelling. On the other end of the spectrum are big R rituals. It could be a world soccer event or an Olympic event. They are decidedly intentional. They are epic. They are profoundly stirring. They're coordinated and formal. They're large scale. They have a transcendent meaning, and you know something special is happening in a big R ritual. There's a sense of community and connectedness, a consciousness, an awareness, almost a spirituality. And I use, being an Ohio State graduate, the big game between Ohio State and Michigan as another example of storytelling that is rich and intense and never ending. People talk about this game months in advance, during the game, and months after the game. In fact, it's almost a continuous storytelling around big R rituals, which can be festivals, art festivals, wine festivals, music festivals. How many of you are just craving to get back to a music festival, right? Some sort of means of connecting with other people. Yeah. So, thinking about rituals and thinking about how a ritual can be a frame of reference for a brand owner and a marketer. A brand can piggyback on a ritual. It can position adjacently to a ritual. It can integrate into a ritual, or it can become a ritual unto itself. Starbucks being an example, I think for many, it's a ritual. So let's take this concept into practice here as an example, and let's pretend you are an appliance manufacturer. you make the observation that coffee, not Starbucks necessarily, but coffee itself is a ritual around the world in the morning to wake up. In my case, I use Diet Coke to wake up, but for around the world, I think increasing, the gap between coffee users and Diet Coke users is significant in terms of how people start their day. So if that's a ritual, and I'm an appliance manufacturer, I could design a clock radio, an alarm clock that is also a coffee maker. That is the idea of integrating a new product, innovating, integrating into a ritual that exists. And because this ritual has meaning, I have now put myself into a meaningful experience with my product. Talking about Diet Coke, the soft drink companies have been trying for decades to get into this, the morning or the breakfast day part, observing how many people do drink Diet Coke in the morning. And they've tried many products, many have tried, many have failed, trying to position as a replacement for coffee in a cold beverage, Coca-Cola being among those. But now there's this new product called Coca-Cola with coffee. And I'm seeing many of you seem to be aware of it. This one may work because this is taking Coca-Cola and integrating it in with the ritual of coffee in a very explicit way. I don't know. It sounds like many of you are applauding to that. So I don't know if you've tried it or not. I'm eager to try it, even though I do drink Diet Coke in the morning. And it's a great example of ritual integration. Maybe too early to tell whether it's been successful, but I think a very smart use of understanding rituals in product innovation. So let's talk about some more mini cases of world-class experience design. I referred to Disney earlier, and I also referred to the fact that you can now apply experience design upstream at the business model level and at the upstream level of your structure and your staffing and your recruiting and your hiring criteria. And Disney does this splendidly, even though they also do a splendid job with their magic bands for an in-park experience that makes it very friction-free to buy and navigate around the park. It starts with their hiring. Everyone is a cast member, and you can't walk in your cast costume from your car. You have to come in your street clothes through tunnels. You have to have unflagging smiles and energy. You can't say, I don't know. You can't point because that's offensive or discourteous in some cultures. No visible tattoos or piercings. I've been saying for a few years now that I expect this to change. And sure enough, I saw an article from the UK that said that Disney Europe is relaxing their requirements or their specifications around tattoos and piercings. Hygiene for hair and fingernails. Autograph practice. Why does autograph practice matter? One of the AMA staff members actually used to be Aladdin at a Disney park. And he told me that they were very disciplined about making sure that every character had the same autograph of that character. Why? Who would notice? What happens if your sister, brother, daughter, cousin goes to Disney, returns with Aladdin's signature, so excited, and their neighbor says, oh, I got one too. And she brings hers out and they compare and the autographs don't match. Boom. The Disney magic is gone. The authenticity is gone. The illusion is gone. Then you look at Walt Disney himself observed that people will carry litter for about 30 feet and then they'll drop it. So trash receptacles every 30 feet. And because it is such a disgusting experience to have gum, melted gum in hot weather on the bottom of your shoe, there's no gum sold in the parks. And they use benign code words. If someone throws up, especially near food, the waiters don't say, hey, somebody just threw up down here. They say there's been a protein spill. And they are constantly changing their code words. And you may have noticed, probably not, chickens are in various places in Disney parks. And from a design standpoint, you can see it even in this picture, there are no right angles. Everything has some curvature to its design. They waft garlic out into the perimeters of the park, and water at the park is never standing. Whether it's a water fountain, whether it's a river, a waterfall, water is always moving there. Why? Because Disney has the highest, or Florida has the highest density of mosquitoes in the country. But at the Disney parks, there's essentially no mosquitoes. That's how they do it. That's why they do it. It's very intentional, and it's attention to detail that is remarkable, I think, in creating a great experience for their park. Other insights can lead you to experience tactics. Insights into the fact that people are uncomfortable with an unknown service person, particularly if they're in a disabled car at roadside or someplace away from home. Anderson Windows does this for people, installers who are coming to the home. Women in particular are not comfortable that someone is going to be entering their home or their space if they don't know who it is. And so what does SafeLight do? They send ahead a picture. I'm Steve. I'm a nice man. I have a family and a dog. If I'm not this person you see on this picture, don't let me in your home and don't let me in your car. Very simple, but smart experience design. And experience design isn't just for service models. Those of you who enjoy a good burger or sandwich with ketchup on it or French fries know that it can sometimes be laborious to get Heinz ketchup out of the bottle. We bang the back of it. We stick a silver knife up in the front of it. But the engineers at Heinz have observed that there is actually a perfect angle to pour out Heinz ketchup. And they affix the label such that only when you are at the correct angle does you read the label correctly. Brilliant. Now, I still bang the back of my ketchup bottle and use a silver knife. But what they've done here is they have extended their selling idea, which is it's so thick and rich, it takes a long time to pour, into an actual experience on the shelf in the supermarket. Brilliant experience design that I commend them for. And again, there are so many great examples of packaged goods who can do great experience design if you put your mind to it. I was at an auto repair shop out in the West in Colorado a few years ago now, and it doesn't have to be expensive for experience design. Why? In this case, the personnel jog everywhere they go. They jog up to the counter. They jog to your car if you're in the parking lot. They jog back to the stock room. They're jogging everywhere they go. And what are they showing you? They're showing you that your time is valued and it's precious, and they're hustling for you, right? That is an experience worth talking about, I think. And then you could go into physicality of retail. We know that the further the distance between visual representations and the product and the consumer, the more favorable consumer attitudes are toward the product, and the more you can charge higher prices for it. We see this in jewelry stores or even in bars where the high-end liquor is up more out of reach in a way. But we also see popular brands where the brand image is associated with broader appeal and there's more social connectedness, where the closer it is, the more sort of impulse ready it is, the more favorable customer attitudes will be, and you can charge more money there. So it's interesting that physical placement, both further and closer, can both result in pricing power. And has anybody stayed in a hotel anywhere, anytime in your life, at least once, where the bathroom tissue has been done in origami? Let me hear from you if you've experienced this anywhere you've stayed. Okay. So absolutely, right? Now, why do we need origami in our bathroom tissue? Is there any functional reason? Plenty of people are reacting to this one, but it's brilliant, simple, relatively inexpensive experience design. And what it says, it's what I call evidence-based experience tactics. It says we've been here. And if we've had the time to do origami around your bathroom tissue, we probably cleaned your showers and your commode and your sink and floor and everything else, right? Now, thinking about this whole idea of cleanliness, and we move into a post-COVID world, There are three main themes that Kantar has pointed out that are going to be at work in a post-COVID world. The first is human scale, and that's simply the idea of cabin fever. People are ready to reconnect and return to a normal life. We've talked about small R rituals. There's also a scarring on this generation that will make this generation risk averse for the rest of their lives. In fact, 4 out of 5 people say they anticipate another pandemic or agree that another pandemic is likely in the next 5 years, which scientists would tell you not so. But people feel that, so it's real. There's risk aversion, and you can expect insurance companies and insurance solutions for increasing amounts of things. You can insure anything. You can insure cyberbullying. You can insure a single trip. You can insure your kid's school tuition. You can insure anything. But the most important element in a post-COVID world is going to be hygiene. No question about it. This is an example that was taken, a statement from the post 9/11 horrific catastrophe that took place with the Twin Towers. And at that point, following that event, TSA security checks were the critical innovation that sent an unmistakable signal to people that it was safe to fly and that institutions were in control. Now, replace TSA security checks because it is hygiene that will be the critical innovation that sends an unmistakable signal that it's safe to re-enter the marketplace. And instead of institutions now, it's going to be on brands to say, we're in control, you can be confident it's safe. Whether it's safe spacing in conferences like this, whether it's wearables that say, hey, you're getting too close to my personal zone and an alarm goes off, or it might be taken out of your hands where an entire system of thermal sensors allows you to have your body temperature measured when you walk in and out of an airport or in and out of a mall. Now, some may have civil rights issues with this, and that's a debate people can have. But there's a big question around COVID, as we know, around the individual rights and the collective obligations and responsibilities we have to one another. So people are still working their way through this. But it will be important whether you are a physical product or a service. Any brand has to show its consumers that it is demonstrably clean and safe with all 5 senses, both in terms of real efficacy as well as perceived efficacy. In addition to hygiene and risk aversion, flipping back to cabin fever or human scale, here's a quick look at how Hyatt observed that people are having cabin fever, and they're also realizing, as many employers are, that you can do your work from anywhere. And so Hyatt promotes workcations focused on well-being, but you also can get your job done. We'll see how this works. It seems like a very smart idea to me, and it absolutely is tied to the insight that people are busting at the seams to return to some connectedness, right? You all agree with that, some connectedness with one another. Thank you. So where do you begin? If you were a park recreations government official, or this was a private park you owned, you might look at this picture and say, oh, I've got to go replant grass on these 2 scarred areas of my lawn. I need to put up a fence and maybe a sign. And when I consult with clients, I often tell them, unfortunately, your brand, your solution is the sidewalk. And people don't want to walk on your sidewalk, right? So if you're the park and recreations owner here, you might think differently about this with your experience design skills now. Has anybody ever heard of the Oregon experiment? Probably not, since it was before most of you were born, I'm guessing, because I'm probably the oldest person on this call. In the 1960s, the University of Oregon built a new campus, and they waited 1 year before they put in sidewalks. 1 year later, they paved all the dirt paths. They paved all the dirt paths. That is designing for experience. You could also say, well, I want to plant flowers along the paths. And yet paving those dirt paths, right? It's a smart idea. Paving the dirt paths, of course, because sometimes they become inaccessible if they're flooded, right? If they're wet. But if you had paved them, you would have the best of both worlds. You would have gone through what customers' dirt path preference is, and you would have designed for it to make it more pleasant. And that's where there is a nuance, a technical distinction between designing experiences, which would mean just like, oh, let's build a sidewalk, and designing for experiences, finding the dirt path first, and then designing for it. So don't fight the dirt path. There are thousands, millions of dirt paths in the customer's head every day. And it is through your empathy and design thinking you can uncover the relevant dirt path, because products get second chances. You can get a replacement. You can get your money back. But poor experiences don't get second chances. Rarely do they get second chances. So it's all about thinking differently. What if, and I do this more extensively in my workshops, Apple owned a hotel chain? What if Starbucks owned a pharmacy, or Uber owned an airline, or Disney owned mass transit, or Nike owned hospitals, or Ritz owned daycare, or Southwest owned telecom, or Zappos owned a cable company, or Amazon owned the federal government? Some people think Amazon does own the federal government, but if they really did, they would probably deliver an experience where the post office experience would be much more expedient, I'm guessing. So that's just a guess. Think differently, applying, different lenses on your current problem. And the golden rule for experience design is remove negatives before you boost positives. It's simple logic, because it is easier to sell painkillers, is it not, than to sell vitamins. And consistent with this idea, can friction sometimes be good? Well, here's an example. I think these are called caches that come up to secure your transaction. And you could argue that I want this in my buying process to protect me. And so this would be a friction that's actually desired, or at least welcomed or tolerated. Then there are also forms of friction that are actually empowerment. Sometimes the customer wants you to design all sorts of things for their experience, but they want to leave certain things up to them. They want to be able to personalize or customize. They want to have control of certain parts of that experience. And technically that's friction. And so it's good friction in that case. It's amazing to me to learn that fewer than 2 in 10 people begin solving problems by subtraction. Additive solutions. When you come into a room, somebody gives you a problem and you start throwing stuff at it. You start, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Additive solutions have a privileged status. They tend to come to mind quickly and easily. But this psychologist asserts that subtractive solutions are not necessarily harder to consider, but they take more effort to find, and they can often be breakthrough ways to solving a problem. So the next time you're faced with a problem, instead of trying to ideate about what to put in, pause and think about what to take out and remove. I use this as an example of where everything in a restaurant experience has been removed except for the proverbial hole in the wall. This is Shanghai, where the reason this hole in the wall exists is because the wall actually conceals the servers behind it and the workers behind it, who all have relative disabilities, disfigurements, and so forth. And they actually hand out coffee through a monster mitt, a furry monster mitt, and enjoy having fun with people and interacting with people. The police in Shanghai have to direct traffic here in order to allow cars to go through, because people are so charmed and in love with this idea. Isn't this a really cool idea? The hole in the wall cafe in Shanghai. It solves so many problems, not the least of which is it is very simple, right? Yes. So you've heard of minimum viable products. Thank you. You've heard of minimum viable products. And what I would recommend to you today with this new line of thinking, look for the minimum lovable experience. And if you're not someone embarrassed by your first release, like this technology that I'm testing out on you today with Sound Off, you've waited too long to launch. Get out there, get your nose bloodied, and learn to establish that minimum lovable experience. Now, I want to wrap up here by taking you back to the Gillette situation. Many of you seem to feel that Gillette was in good standing with the message they delivered. Look at this pricing in Amazon. Now, this is a number of months old, so it may not be right up to the moment, but the same technology for the same blade is almost twice as much for women as it is for men per blade in Amazon. In Target, $3.55 for men, $5 for women. The same blade, same technology. Even in the UK, £2.95 for men, same product, £3.66 for women. Now, that's called a pink tax. And what I want to ask this group is, if I look at these four options, I'm going to ask you for your feedback on number one. The pricing you just saw doesn't take away from their messaging. Let's hear your applause. Okay. Number two, the pricing makes the messaging disingenuous. The pricing makes the message disingenuous. And number three, give Gillette a break for at least the message. Okay. And number four, Gillette can do better, though, and should. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I think that I looked at Gillette's and Procter and Gamble's management teams and boards, and there are plenty of female leaders in this organization. Maybe not as many as there should be, but there are certainly enough to have been self-aware that they had a pink tax going on. Now, that's not always directly related to them, because there are, as you know, in the line of the value chain, distribution, and there's some freedom of pricing at the retail level. But if Gillette really, really wanted to do something for women, in addition to delivering an important social message, they could have also said, and we are going to gender neutral pricing so that everybody can buy their blade for the same cost. This has even spawned new businesses. And my point here is that woke washing or virtue signaling are not substitutes for usefulness and value. In fact, if you use storytelling to try to say one thing, but your behavior in your experience is the other, that's a real problem. And so you, as marketers or people in business, have unprecedented superpowers going forward. Artificial intelligence, data analytics, geo-tracking, mobile technology. My question to you is, how are you going to use that power? Telling, selling, pop-ups and come-ons? Innovation and improvement of useful solutions? Experiences worth talking about? Quality of life in a better world? A little bit of each? All of none? You tell me, how are you going to use your superpowers? Because in the end, a brand equals the experience to the power of story. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Russ. This is Amazing. If people still clapping, that's wonderful. Not only, I also love your presentation. Of course, the content is always exciting. This is not the first time I watch you. And to your credit, that you also came to University of South Florida as a guest speaker, and your presentation was completely different than this one. So Russ, we have a few minutes left, but I have many questions. So let me just start quickly. If you just please give quick answers to what you are going to see. 2 questions are related together. I'm going to show it to you. So first one is, will retail shops be replaced with virtual reality shops? And then here's another one related to the same one. There are 3 questions actually. Will retail shops turn to be a showroom with most of the shopping done online? What is your thoughts about these?
Well, I think they're both good questions, and they're really almost answered themselves the way they're asked, because it will never be one to the exclusion of the other. People crave connectedness, and some people crave more of a connectedness than others. So it will be important for a brand to be an omni-channel brand, and to understand which channels the dirt path is going through. And if the dirt path takes them through a particular channel, make sure you're there and make sure your solutions are accessible, right? But I think the showroom thing is an idea we already see happening, and we certainly see online shopping growing. But we will see that have an impact, but it won't dislocate retail shops altogether.
Perfect. Here's another question. You defined American Marketing Association as a technology organization. Do you believe that most companies now, by default, technology companies, or is this just a marketing function?
I love that question. Thank you for whomever asked it. So I believe that every company has to have a digital-first mindset, and technology is not just high-tech. Remember, technology is low-tech and high-tech. They both have tech, and technology simply means finding better ways to do things. And this is why I say the AMA is a technology company, because we are about finding better ways to deliver professional development. And so if it means high tech, we're going to be there. If it means low tech, we're going to be there. And so it is not just a marketing function. And by the way, nor is experience design. Experience design is a team sport. And it doesn't happen in an organization unless the entire C-suite and the CEO are working to the same goal.
Perfect. Here's the next question. I'm going fast, so I want to get as many as possible. Why do you believe that microwave remote control designers could not get it, while Steve Jobs got it? Is this vision or lack of innovation environment in these companies?
Such a good question. Well, I think that sometimes there are, just like there is a societal culture, there are corporate cultures that dominate the way things go at any given point in time. And I think, for many decades, innovation was very myopic. It was thought of in terms of product innovation rather than solution innovation. And as a result, you had people trying to add things, to make it better. More is better. Particularly in Western civilization, more is always better, right? More. And I think that that's a mindset that has to be broken. And I think so. Steve Jobs, marched to a different drum. He understood that it was about the user, the usability, the usefulness, and he brought a intense focus on solving problems, right? And so, yes, an environment has to be well suited for innovation too. You have to have a CEO who believes in it. You have to have stakeholders who believe in it. You have to have people who buy into it at the organization. They need to be empowered. So environment is a key part of it as well.
Russ, we have a comment. I want to read that to you. Bravo to Mr. Klein and AMA for leading by example. Your sound off app is amazing, innovative, loved it. I also loved it too. So I would love to talk to you how we can use it in our presentations as well too. That's wonderful. And students ask you 2 questions. They are kind of related. I want to show them, both of them, to you. What is your top 1 or 2 advice for marketing students? And if you are 18-year-olds now, knowing what you know today, what would you do differently? So kind of if you maybe combine these top advice and go back to your young years, depending upon your career, what would you do differently now?
Okay, well, wow. So let's go to the advice first. I don't know if this is, again, a old movie, I think in the 80s, called Sliding Doors. And Gwyneth Paltrow, I think it was one of her first movies. And it was about a woman who got fired from an ad agency. She went home early that day. She ran for the train. She missed the train. The doors shut. Then through the magic of film, the doors opened and she got in this time. And then the story plays out, one where she got in the door and one where she didn't get in the door. And there are two different stories from there on. When she got in the door, she catches her fiance in bed with another woman. When she didn't get in the door, she ends up marrying her fiance. This goes to the importance of a single event and making yourself knocking on doors, being there to step through the door. And so I tell people, there's a book called Never Have Lunch Alone. There are plenty of opportunities. If someone says, oh, let's go out tonight, and you're kind of like, oh, I don't feel like going out. Go. You might meet somebody. You might find a sliding door that changes your life. In fact, you will find a sliding door that changes your life. Your life will be different based on every decision you make. So be available for the moment when it comes. The second piece of advice is versatility. I think this is very, very important in a highly changing, rapid changing world. Adaptation. You remember, the Darwin's theory is not survival of the strongest. It's survival of the people, the species that adapt. So you have to be able to adapt, to different environments. And there's nothing greater than to be an employee who can raise their hand and say, I can do that, for something that maybe is a new problem. So versatility, find the doors, be versatile. 18 years from now, what would I have done if I was 18? I would have, I believe this or not, I really think about this often. I would have joined either the military or some sort of public service, Peace Corps. I would have done something of service for a few years before I went into college.
Perfect. Last question. We are over our time, but there are so many questions. I feel so bad of not asking. This is important. And I got many questions about this, so I kind of combined them. What are your thoughts about influencer marketing? Is it here to stay? Any research on its effectiveness from the AMA?
Yes. Well, there are plenty of experts about influencer marketing in the AMA. I'm not one of them. But I will tell you, I have an opinion about influencer marketing, which is similar to my opinion about content marketing. I think there is a content marketing bubble, and I think there is an influencer marketing bubble because they are both being misused. They're starting to be misused. And when people when brands start to misuse content marketing and misuse influencer marketing, they lose their authenticity. They break the bond of trust with their customer. And so I think that, I say marketers are addicted to storytelling. Content marketing is part of what drives this addiction. And so I think it's important to be a responsible marketer when you think about both content marketing and influencer marketing.
Thank you, Russ. This was excellent. Wonderful. We really thank you for taking the time from your very busy schedule and being with all of us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Any last words that you want to say when we close? And we are closing the conference, by the way. More than 2,500 people registered for this conference, which I'm thanking you again on behalf of them. Any closing remarks, and we'll close the session.
Well, it was a privilege to be in front of you and to share my thoughts. And I encourage you all to, go out there now and find another sliding door right now, today. Find a sliding door you weren't going to find yesterday.
Perfect. Thank you, Russ, again. And for those of you, thank you. I love this. Look at this. This is so good. We can hear them now. We are seeing their comments, but it's different. By the way, there are so many comments thanking you, Russ, by the way. And I just want to tell our audience that today is the last day. We have got several more concurrent sessions, and we will meet in the Zoom link at 4 p.m. for the closing ceremony. Thank you again, Russ, and thank you to all of you who listen, participate. Have a wonderful day, afternoon, morning, night.
Thank you, Gian.